Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So I had like three different ports for the mic on the computer. And so I tried the different ones and the different adapters, and I finally got one to work.
Oh, that's good.
All right. So I guess we should start over, huh? Is it
Yeah.
cutting in and out?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, hold on. Let me set the mic down for a second.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me all right, or am I cutting in and out still?
No, you better.
Okay, awesome. I think it's just because I was moving the mic around.
Oh.
Let me put it somewhere else because I'm gonna rip it out from here. Hold on. Fuck, get off. All right, still hear me?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay.
Okay. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Stevie Rocker Podcast. I'm here with my brother, Baphy.
Hey.
You want to give a little intro to yourself?
Yeah. First of all, I will probably come off sounding very awkward because I have never done one of these before. Um, but my name is Sareth. A lot of people call me Baphy, and I am an author and indie book reviewer. I also vlog on my experiences with PTSD and schizoaffective disorder. Schizoaffective disorder, for those of you who don't know, is schizophrenia combined with a mood disorder. In my case, the mood disorder is major depressive disorder. So yeah,
Oh.
I don't know what else to say.
All right. Yeah, today we're going to talk about mental illness and how we deal with it. I deal with anxiety. That what triggers that is being around other people. If I go to the mall, it's hard for me to do that because there's so many people, and I feel like I just gotta stare at the floor while walking away.
I understand that.
Or I feel like running away. And how I deal with that is actually I listen to music, and Baphy actually helped me breathing exercises, which that helped a lot.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, also triggered it was waking up every day because my mom, I don't call her my mom anymore. I call her Patty. She, she's full disrespectful to me. She always in the past woke me up, opened my door really, really loud, and I was like breathing heavy and just have a full panic attack. So she's kind of responsible for my panic attacks.
Yeah. I uh I can't stand being waken up by a loud noise or anything like that because I'm like you, it triggers a panic attack.
Yeah,
Um I've had a lot of sleep problems and they've stemmed from the PTSD, but it took me years to get a diagnosis of PTSD. So I honestly, for a long time, didn't know what was going on um, because nobody had given me the correct diagnosis. And so there wasn't anything I could do to help my sleep problems. And when I finally did get diagnosed with PTSD and I started therapy specifically for that, um, the problems I had got a lot better, like the anxiety and the panic attacks and the bad dreams. Um, I still wake up sometimes in a panic attack, and for those of you who don't know, they're called nocturnal panic attacks when you have them while you're sleeping. They can also be called night terrors, but night terrors usually have a bad dream or something that go along with them. Um, and they can be medicated. You can actually be medicated with different heart medications. to keep you from dreaming at all. And it's fairly common to give that type of medicine to soldiers coming home from war who can't get past the nightmares. But what would help more long term in a lot of cases is actual psychotherapy, to understand the reasons behind those anxiety attacks and nightmares and whatnot, which is what I did. But there are some cases where psychotherapy is not going to help and you're going to need the medication. So, crap. I had a thought there for a moment. You said you listen to music and whatnot to help with your anxiety, Stevie.
Yeah, I do.
That's actually, yeah, my therapist, she actually got me to start back into art, drawing and painting and writing, because like I said, I'm a writer. That's what I do. Um, but I've kind of started in recent years using it as therapy, and not just as a hobby or whatever. And it actually um, really helps to find something very specific to the person's interest that will help them. Um, what's the word? Crap. I can't think of the word. But help them cope through something more specific to them. So it's like writing a story might work for me, but painting might be better for someone else, or taking a walk. And a lot of people will get angry about being told to, go enjoy some nature, take some deep breaths and stuff like that, because it doesn't help them. But it also does help a lot of people. So medication might work for one person, therapy might work for one, just, having some time by yourself might work for another person. So nobody should be shamed, for like which particular one works for them. There's a lot of shaming those people who need medication to get past their anxiety and their mental illness. But if that works for you, then there's no shame in that. It's not any different than, taking medication for your liver or your heart or anything like that. And that's kind of, I feel like, a big thing in mental illness stigma, is that people don't register it as a physical illness, but the brain is a physical organ, and therefore mental illness is a physical illness, and it's a real illness.
Yeah, that's true.
So, sorry, I feel like I kind of like took over the podcast there for a second, and my eternal voice in my head was like, shut up, shut up, it's not your turn.
No, if you want to do that, it's totally cool.
Yeah.
Speak your mind.
uh, I'll end up rambling, and your viewers are going to get on here. And it's like, what the hell is going on?
I know. I know they'll like it though.
uh,
They like hearing our story.
yeah. So Stevie, when did you first notice that you had anxiety?
Um, Probably when I was younger or going to school. I used to not want to be around my, let's say, dad's family. They
Yeah.
always had like parties and everything, and I felt like they're all drinking, or it's like a 4th of July or Christmas or something like that. I'm in the
Yeah.
room full of everybody. Some people are screaming, they're like, woo! Because the game is.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there like, oh, I feel like I'm in a room by myself. Like, I don't know what that feeling is, but it felt like I was lost. Like,
Yeah.
I always felt like I didn't belong anywhere.
Yeah, I can commiserate with that. 'Cause my family, we didn't. None of my family were like big into games or any types of wrestling or sports match type things. I mean, occasionally me and my mom would watch the Olympics, but
Hmm.
um, but we were really big on family gatherings, like going out to eat and celebrating birthdays and things like that. And I always felt like even when it was my birthday and everyone's attention was on me, and I always felt kind of like I wasn't really there or like I wasn't supposed to be there. Kind of like even
Oh,
though no one acted that way, I kind of felt like the outcast, you know?
yeah, I felt like the outcast too, or the black sheep of the family.
Right.
I
And
know,
I mean now go ahead.
I know people say like, "Oh, we love you, Stevie." Before I was Stevie, they still said they loved me. I felt loved in a way, but I felt like something was different. Like I wasn't truly loved, or
Yeah, like they were just saying it because they thought they had to or something.
it's like a requirement to say, "Oh, I love you." But I don't
Hmm.
truly feel loved here.
Right. That's how I was. I mean, with my grandparents, I really believe, I still believe they're like the only family I'm still in contact with. And I've always felt like they have honestly loved me because they've always supported me. Even when, my mom and my dad were like, mad at me for little things like wanting to be goth or liking horror movies or dragons and stuff like that because they're very strangely conservative. They were Christian, they were very Christian, but some of the rules they had were just over the top. Like my mom thought dragons were evil, and so I wasn't allowed to have like dragon toys and things like that. And I'm just like, where did you get this from? That dragons were like the spawn of Satan or whatever.
Well,
So
anyone can look at that and be like, "Oh, that's evil. They look creepy, scary."
I guess that's what it was. It never made sense to me because I always thought, they're cool. They're like, dinosaurs with wings.
Yeah.
But I guess that's another thing most of my family anyway, was conservative and Christian enough that they didn't like dinosaurs because dinosaurs meant that, evolution was real. And of course, they didn't like that. But I don't know. I honestly don't, but I get the feeling that I became more of a obligations. Like I was the kid, so they had to say, "Oh, I love you," but they didn't really mean it, or they didn't like quite love me as much as they loved other people in the family.
Or they probably feel like they had to say it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, well, the first time I noticed, now when I was a kid, I didn't know, a lot of terms and whatnot because I wasn't ever taught anything about psychology or mental health or anything like that. Since I've been an adult, I've done a lot of research into different things, especially the things that I've dealt with. But when I was growing up, I remember having my first nightmare, or the first nightmare I can remember when I was about 4 or 5, because I remember because I was in kindergarten, or I was almost in kindergarten. And it was weird because it was a Winnie the Pooh dream. But what was happening in it was that Piglet was trying to set himself on fire at the stake, kind of like a witch, because he was sad that you know, nobody wanted him around. And that was like my first dream as as a 4 or 5 year old. And ever since then, I can't remember having any good dreams or any even just, neutral dreams until I was like 19 and I had my first good dream. But I only ever realized that I actually realized I had depression before I had anxiety. And like I said, I didn't know what the terms were, but the feelings I recognized. I was around 8, um, and I had just got diagnosed with a blood disorder recently. I think I was about 6 or 7 when I got diagnosed with a blood disorder. It's pretty rare and it can turn into leukemia. But it was around 8 that I realized that I got really sad and a lot of times for like no reason. Like anytime I had a friend over, the minute they left, I felt like I wanted to die. Like it was bad, and I brought that up to my therapist, and she says that you don't think about kids having depression and anxiety and things like that, but they can, have the imbalances or the misfiring in the brain and whatever else. Uh, and that's another thing that it's really important to me, more so even than helping adults with mental health struggle is getting people to understand that kids need their mental health checked, right? I think it should be normalized. Yeah, I think it should be normalized that everyone just, every so often, how you have a checkup with your doctor, he checks your heart and your weight and your vital signs and all that. I think it should become normal that, especially for children, to when you have a doctor's checkup, that you also have a mental health checkup, because a lot of the people that I've met as adults, uh, their problems wouldn't be there, or they wouldn't be as bad if they had gotten that help beforehand when they were a kid and when it was first starting to develop.
That's true. I think everybody should do that, probably at a
Yeah,
young age.
yeah,
And their parents should be like, the parents should talk to their kids about all this stuff.
right. I agree. And like, it is important, but I understand that. What I'm trying to say is I understand that not all parents realize that is such a big deal. My parents didn't realize it. My wife's parents, no one's parents really that I've known, like in our generation, have ever put mental health on a high priority. And it's because nobody ever taught them that it should be. So it's not really at fault of the parents, because we're still getting into an age where that's becoming normal and that's not becoming like a label that you want to avoid at all cost. Because back in the days, if you were seeing a therapist or a psychiatrist, if they said you were mentally ill, that kind of alienated you from other people, and it was kind of something you bore in shame, and we're still trying to get it to where it's not that way.
That's true. I mean, no one really knows what's really going on with their kids, or the parents don't know how to deal with it. If
Right.
For me, I also deal with depression. It it started at a young age. I had this cat named Kiki, and she was she was always there for me and always cuddling me, always coming to me when I sit down on the couch, and she was like, I don't know, when I started, like, I was always sad and stuff, and I got Kiki in a way that was coping me from my depression. I was getting so much love and cuddles and everything, and then when she passed, like, I wanted to go with her as
Mhm.
she was dying and stuff. So I was trying to be self destructive and try to hurt myself so I can go with her. But thankfully, the rest of my kids, my cats, saw me doing what I was trying to do, and seeing their eyes looking at me, like, I was like, dude, you can't do this.
Oh,
There's a better way to cope.
yeah.
You can't just end it. So anyone out there like is dealing with depression, that is suicidal or anything like that, whatever triggers you, you can't give up. You have to live every day to your fullest, and if you have dreams, go out there and do it.
Oh,
Pursue it.
yeah.
Be happy, and there's gonna be someone that loves you no matter what. So I have all my brothers that continue to help me so much, and I appreciate them so much. That gives me a reason to live.
And we appreciate you, Stevie. Um, yeah, no, I totally agree. It's like drawing from my personal experience, ever since, like I said, I was 8 when I first realized that I got really ridiculously sad, and you're talking about your cats. I had a cat die when I was much younger than when I realized all this was going on, but I didn't really have anything affect me like that outside of um, the emotionally abusive and sometimes physically abusive environment that I grew up in. I uh, I always wanted to escape. I remember when I was, well, it was around the time that the first, well, I guess it was a little later. I'm trying to get my timeline correct. I guess I was still around like 9 or 10. I was obsessed with Mewtwo from Pokemon, and I remember getting going to bed for like a full week or two, praying every night that I could, escape into Pokemon and be Mewtwo, right? Because I was so like sad about, and I was also angry about my home life, and I after the couple of weeks, I realized it wasn't going to happen. So I remember going to the shower and just crying my eyes out. And it kind of sounds funny to share this story now, but I was a little kid. And so to me, it was a big deal. But looking back on it now, I was like, that's not a normal reaction, you know? And a lot of things parents can blame on, hormones as a teenager or uh, misconceptions that children have, imaginations, things like that. And that's why it is important for a third party, a mental health professional, someone who the children feel they can talk to, without judgment from their parents or anything like that, because they might notice things sooner than anyone else could. Um, but talking about being depressed, when I was 12 was when I first started self harming. My sleep problems were getting really bad by that point, and I had developed somnophobia, which basically meant I was terrified of going to sleep. So I would cut and I would hurt myself, starve myself, um, make myself intentionally like really cold, things like that would help me just stay awake.
Oh,
And at that point, I really started feeling like I was having some more health problems too, but um, I was really starting to feel like I didn't want to be alive anymore, that I wished I would die, because it started with me wishing my parents would die, then it turned into, this is nothing's ever going to get better. Uh, and I didn't want to be alive anymore. Um, I hoped that my health issues, I had problems with my liver and my lungs, and I hoped that those would kill me and I wouldn't have to worry with life anymore. And it just gradually got worse and worse and worse until I was 17 is when I first tried to kill myself. And and at that point I was just I wasn't me. I wasn't a person anymore. I was just kind of someone that was alive. I was here, but I wasn't like, you know, actually here, if that makes sense. And I really did want to die. And then a few years after that, I tried to kill myself again. But it was just at the weirdest fucking time I met my wife. And she started like bringing me out into the world, and she realized that something, was wrong with me mentally. And she encouraged me to see a psychiatrist, and she's always been there to support me. And so, anyone that's thinking that they're in a really desperate situation, that nothing's ever going to change, my best advice is that, just like you said, Stevie, just stick it out, because
Yeah.
you can be in a really, really shitty, the worst situation ever, and you could think there's no recovering from it. And then out of nowhere, something does come, and you feel like, oh, well, maybe there is, a reason to stick around. It's not worth, and I know I don't want to speak for anyone who's been in like horribly abusive situations, who can't get out of them and things like that. I'm not trying to belittle anyone's struggle, but I've been in some very bad places, and uh, I would have never believed, had you asked me just several years ago, I would have never believed that there was a way out, but there is. There's always going to be a way out. And sometimes it's not a sudden thing. Sometimes it's a gradual thing. Like, what was your new your motto about making it a good day, Stevie?
Yeah, I say stay strong, stay positive, try to have a good day.
Yeah. And you said it's going to be a good day because I'm going to make it a good day.
Yeah,
Now, that's I love that, because like when I was first hearing it, I was like, well, I can't control everything, so I can't, just make it a good day. But you actually can, if you really think about it, because attitude goes a long way. Even if things around you are shitty, if you keep working, doing everything you can to get past those things, seeking help from people who've been in those places, there's actually a lot to be said about willpower, getting out of shitty situations, and having a good
that is true. You gotta think
um
positive and just try to make it a good day. You will have a good day. Just gotta make steps, positive steps, not self-destructive steps.
e- exactly. And they can be like little steps too, like today I'm going to make myself, get out of bed instead of laying in bed. Even if you don't do anything, if you can just go in to the couch and lay on the couch instead, small steps, things like that will help. um uh because everything I've learned from my therapist is that medication and therapy, and doing what you can to get out of certain situations, um that's all very important. But if you don't have the will to actually try to make things better, to try and do everything you can, then the world acting on its own, and the world itself changing for you, is only going to go so far, because the world's not going to change perfectly for you.
No. And I actually, when I was in school, somehow, like I said, I was, I was just saying like, oh, I'm dark, and then I guess my teacher is like, oh, I better tell the other teacher. So, like, like I
Beware,
was,
Stevie is among us.
yeah. So my teacher, I guess she was concerned. She was like, oh, well, we're gonna set you up for therapy, and I went into this. I don't know what they do, but they just I was like having a like an interview thing, and then they somehow got me the perfect therapist, and I got into like getting a caseworker and stuff. Even though it was like some stayed, some didn't stay. I didn't have some caseworkers for that long. I had this one. We just went to Wendy's one time, and that was the end of it. So I was basically judging everyone that I had for a caseworker because I know they're just gonna leave me anyway.
Right.
And then I ended up with this sweet lady named Stephanie. She was so sweet, and she was so much fun to be around and hang out, and always there for me. And then I end up I've been to like therapy since I graduated from 2015 because I was in the child section of therapy, and that's how far I was able to go, like
Yeah.
23 or 25 when I was 25. And then I graduated from there. I didn't see her anymore. And then probably a year later, my depression got really worse. And I was like, oh, I think I want to go back to therapy. Then I went back to therapy, and I sat in the room, and all I ended up doing was just crying because I missed my other one, my first therapist, because she was so
Yeah.
sweet. And we played therapy games and had fun and enjoyed her company, and it was always fun to hang out over there. Now, this was way before like COVID and stuff.
Right.
So,
That's
yeah.
that's a problem I've always had too with therapists is I went in knowing that they were the first therapist I saw was a well, she was a psychiatrist. She wasn't an actual therapist, but she was a pediatric, and I first saw her when I was 18, so I only saw her like 3 times, and then I had to get a new therapist, and then, that therapist moved, and so I had to get a new therapist, and that one quit, and I had to get a new one, and that one transferred me to someone else because she said she didn't feel equipped to handle. That's what she told me. And so I ended up getting to a point where I just was depressed because I kept having to get a new therapist. I couldn't settle in with anyone I felt comfortable with. I actually ended up going through 15 therapists until I found the one that I've had for the last 4 years. And she's really great. But before her, I was just done. I was like, I don't even want to talk to you people because y'all keep changing on me. So it's really hard to actually let yourself open up when you know that eventually that person's going to, leave or have to go to somewhere else.
That's so true. So I had to deal with that too. A lot of people were like, "Oh, I got a new promotion. I'm gonna leave."
Yeah,
So
it's like, forget you.
it's hard to just trust them, and it's hard for me to trust anyone. But I just stick with like
Yeah,
my closest bros and stuff.
yeah,
I ended up I ended up with a new caseworker because I went back to like the adult side, but I didn't. I kind of like closed the therapy part, but I had like a pill doctor I usually see. I just call her pill doctor, but she's I guess my therapist now. But
yeah.
she's pretty sweet and stuff, and she always asks, "Well, how are you doing?" I'm like,
Aw.
"Oh, I'm the same, just like last other times." And when I was with my first therapist, they always had to ask, "Do you feel like hurting yourself, hurting others?" Like they always have to ask that.
Right, mine does the same thing.
And I'm like, no. I feel like I wanted to say yes because I want to hurt myself when I'm really sad, but
Yeah,
I had to think positive and do something else. So I turned to writing music, lyrics, because that's my first therapist said, like, I should do that. And my teacher said I should do that. So I went
yeah,
to that and played video games, playing The Sims, I love streaming that on Twitch. It's so much fun. Um, it keeps me occupied, and plus helping with the depression. I talk on party chat with my brothers. Now it's to the point where I don't want to even say good night because I stay up all night till it's like 7 in the morning. Then I go to sleep, and I wake up probably around 5 or something. Because I don't want to say, "Oh, I love you, bro. Good night." Like I don't want to say goodbye. I want to continue being there, and that wish
Right.
that because it helps me. So I feel sad when I go to sleep. Now I feel like, in my age, I feel like I just want to cuddle the bed.
Yeah,
I got nobody here, so it's sad.
I can
And
understand that.
I ended up, I,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I ended up like 2019 with a new caseworker. He's pretty awesome, and he's still with me, even though he had like promotions. He was like, no matter what promotion he had, he fought to keep me, and I'm continuing gonna fight to keep him.
Oh, that's
And,
awesome.
and no one has ever got me this far starting my testosterone. They were like, "Oh, we'll make steps to do that."
Never actually do anything.
No, it never
I've
happened.
been there too.
They were promised to, yeah, we'll do that, and then you end up being like just sitting there, and then they were like, "Oh, sorry, I got a promotion."
Right.
Then they leave you. Then yeah,
I always hated getting the feeling that like one of the first things I asked the therapist that I have now, the one I've had for the last 4 years, and was, do you actually care about your patients or is it just a job? Right. I outright asked her that because, like you said, I was just done with people who just, and I understand they're individuals and they have their own lives and everything, but in the profession of, psychology and stuff, I kind of feel they should make more of a commitment to their patients,
yeah,
but yeah, but I asked her that and she just looked at me and she's like, I'm trying to remember her exact words. She's got an attitude which I fucking love. I really do. It's funny because she immediately pegged me for the kind that doesn't want any bullshit. Don't ask me, well, how does that make you feel? Or, like call me out on my shit and, all that. But she was just like, well, I wouldn't be in this, I wouldn't have this job if I didn't care about my patients. I'm like, well, I mean, you could. I'm like, and she's like, I guess, but no, I care about my patients. I'm like, okay. And so I kept seeing her, and then eventually she has seen me like after hours, and she's talked to me on the phone about things, and she helped me get on testosterone too. Like, oh, I didn't mention that. For anyone who didn't know, I'm also female to male trans. But like the first time I went in there and I was just like, okay, so I need a letter. And we had never talked about trans stuff before. And she's like, okay. And she wrote the letter straight then because she didn't believe in, having to monitor a trans person's decision to start hormones and stuff, right? But
yeah,
anyway, after a while, I started to realize, with different things she was doing, is that she does actually care. Um, but I always did, kind of hate the feeling. Like I never tried to get attached to my therapist after like the first couple because I didn't want it to be like saying goodbye, like to a friend or whatever. It's like get that feeling that, well, they never actually really cared. It was just their job, which it's kind. I know I'm rambling on this, but it's kind of like back and forth because I understand if I was in that position, I couldn't emotionally handle being connected to that many people with all those different problems. I hate saying that, but it's true. And so at the same time I get that, I still, want her to be like, what's that, committed or whatever to me and my health. So it's like back and forth. I can get both sides. But it is frustrating when they have to leave or when they just decide to leave out of nowhere.
yeah. It's like you have them, and then you have them for a while. You're comfortable with them, and then you just get that that news. They have a
Right.
new job or moving or other bullshit.
Um, you talking about like how people could get help if they're having issues. Um, if you're if you start experiencing any emotional trouble when you're when you're still uh, a minor and you don't feel comfortable like talking to someone, what Stevie said, what you said about always talking to your brothers and hanging out with them and whatnot, if there's a lot to be said, if you don't feel comfortable with an actual professional, whether you're afraid your parents will find out what you're feeling or thinking or whatever, or you just don't want to trust a stranger, get a friend, like your closest friend, someone you trust won't, share your stuff. And even if they don't have the experience of a mental health professional, because a mental health professional will be better at figuring out what's going on with you, especially if you don't really understand what's going on with you, and steering you in the directions that will help you cope or help you get better. Um, but if you're not comfortable with that yet, do get a friend, because even just talking to them, just being like, I felt really shitty today, and I don't feel like life's ever going to get better. And they just kind of vent to them. If do that, because that is better, that helps, it honestly does, and that is better than not doing anything at all and then just keeping everything to yourself and kind of suffering in silence. Sharing with anyone, even if it's a stranger you see on the train that you're never going to see again, so you don't see a problem with sharing your secrets to them or whatever, getting it out in some fashion does help. And if you don't happen to not have a friend you feel comfortable enough talking to, also what Stevie said, um, get on Twitch or Omegle or something, talk to some strangers, or write some music, write a story, listen to music, do something that can take your mind to a better place and kind of give you a sort of hope that things as you get older will start to change. Because doing all that's better than it's infinitely better. As someone who was always the suffer in silence type, who didn't try anything to cope with the feelings and the emotions I was having, I can tell you it is infinitely better to try any of that than to not do anything at all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't want to
you
keep
don't want to
everything
keep everything
to
to
yourself.
yourself. Right.
You want to just you gotta not let it all in there, because if you leave it in there for a really long time, it's gonna like mess you up. It's
Exactly.
you gotta vent it out. I know a lot of people don't like it when people vent online, but just vent to someone. You'll feel a whole lot better. I always feel a whole lot better as long as I talk to my brothers. I do feel better and I feel happier. I feel like I'm in a better place now.
Same here. Um yeah, and what you said about people not liking seeing people vent or whatever online, that's true, but my advice is that if you're on your personal profile or whatever, fuck what anyone cares. If you feel like venting, vent.
Yeah.
It's
Fuck
your
the
space.
haters.
That's like someone coming on to your profile and saying, "Well, you shouldn't post stuff like that," or "I don't like it when you post stuff like that." That's like them coming into your house and telling you, how to clean it, or that your cats shouldn't be on the furniture and stuff like that. It's fucking rude.
Yeah.
Uh, Um, I'll go in the opposite way. If you do want to, if you're a minor and you do want to try talking to a mental health professional, uh, I know probably the biggest worry for most minors, I know it was for me, was the parents finding out, what was going on. The parents, it's a little touchy because they can tell the parents if they think you need, you know, more care than they can provide. But as far as y'all's conversations, they're not supposed to tell your parents. You can always go to the principal at your school and ask to speak to the counselor because I think all schools are required to have a counselor. At least they are in like the U.S., right?
Yeah, I always had a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I had like appointments with her.
But if you in an ideal situation, you just be able to, if you trust your parents enough, if they're, easy enough to talk to, you can just go to them and tell them you'd like to talk to a therapist or someone just to see if they think something's wrong or because you feel like you need to see someone to vent to who has, experience or whatnot. But I know that it's more often than not that you're not going to feel comfortable telling your parents about whatever's going on, or you're not going to think that talking to anyone is going to help. uh Something that was wrong with me growing up was that I was raised in a very what do you call it, it wasn't that they hated mental health care. It was just that if you needed it, they viewed you as like weak or, like you couldn't handle your own stuff, that you had to talk to a psychiatrist to sort your stuff out for you, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so like I never wanted to admit, that I was weak, that I had emotional problems and all that stuff. But to be honest, anyone who makes you feel weak for having emotional problems or mental struggles or just, not being able to handle something that's gone on in your life very well, anyone that makes you feel weak for that, or if you're making yourself feel weak for that, that is just, it's just not true. I know a lot of us tend to feel that way, but think about it. Is it more difficult for you to just not say anything, to not try to get any help? Or is it more difficult to admit that, hey, something's going on and I need some help, I need some advice? If if you're like most people I've met, it's much more difficult to be like, oh shit, yeah, I do need help, rather than just to pretend that you don't. And pretending that you don't is only going to lead to, like Stevie said, your problems just continuing to get worse. My therapist actually has a metaphor, I guess, for that. It's like you get a bottle and you get some ranch dressing or Italian dressing or something. You start filling it every time you're having emotional problems. You start filling it with the dressing, right? And you leave it there, and it's just going to continue to get sour and sour. And then the more you fill it and it gets up to the top, it's just going to spill out, and all this horrible, sour, moldy crap is just going to explode out of you. And I guess that sounds kind of gross to some people, but that's a good analogy for what'll happen, because that's exactly what happened to me. Is I never got any help, and things just kept getting worse and worse and worse as I was growing up. And then 17, I already mentioned I tried to kill myself, and then shortly after that, when I turned 18, I had a psychotic break and I went off on everyone. I eloped, and it was just not pretty. I was very, at that point when I had the break, I was not suicidal so much anymore as I was homicidal, and it just was not pretty, and that would not have happened had I done something to help my mental health, whether it was venting or sharing what was going on with me, seeing a psychiatrist, or anything would have helped. But I had done absolutely nothing good anyway. I had self harmed and stuff like that. But but yeah, you just keep on going, and one day all that nasty, moldy ass dressing is going to just explode, and then you're really going to feel bad. I'm not saying that as a threat or anything. That's just that's what happens.
It won't be a pretty sight if you keep everything bottled up there. You got
Exactly.
you got to find some way to feel better.
Right.
Never a destructive way. Just be positive. Do something you enjoy doing. Something that makes you happy, and
Right.
continue to do that every day.
Exactly. And sometimes you're going to have to force yourself to do things, whether you're suffering from depression or anxiety or psychosis or anything else. Um, it's not always going to be so much as, oh, I love painting. Let's take painting as an example. I love to paint. I'm just going to get up and do that every day, and it'll be easy because it's something I love to do, right?
Yeah.
When you deal with mental illness, and even when you don't necessarily have a mental illness, even people who just, normies, I guess, I don't know, people who don't have real actual mental illnesses still can have mental health struggles. So, getting up every day and doing something you love, you're not going to continue to love it every day. Some days you're just going to be done. You're not going to want to deal with anything. You're not going to find joy, especially with like depression. You're not going to find joy in doing the things that you once did. So, sometimes you're going to have to force yourself to do something, just so that your mind knows that you're not giving up, and that will eventually help with your mental health problems. And also, there's a line between forcing yourself to do something and just taking the day off or taking the week off because you're not feeling too well, and just letting yourself be down. It's okay to be sad, you know.
Yeah.
um it's just when it becomes a habit where you stop trying is where it becomes a problem. So yeah, if you're going along, then you have a day and you just feel crappy, you feel depressed, you feel anxious or whatever. Take the day off, don't do anything, just relax. And what's most important is don't make yourself feel bad for taking the day off. Like I said, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be anxious. Just once you realize it's starting to become a pattern, like, oh, I'll take this day off, I didn't feel good. You can take the next day off, you didn't feel good, and then the next day and the next day. When it comes to about, 4 days or a week, and you're still, oh, I don't feel good, I'm going to take the day off, stop taking the day off. At that point is when you need to try to force doing something. I would start by trying to talk to someone, but you need to try something at that point, because once you get stuck in that cycle of just letting yourself be depressed or anxious or what have you, then it's going to be harder to break yourself out of the cycle of being like that.
That's true. You could take a few days off, but if you
Right.
take even more, it's gonna be even harder on
Right.
yourself.
See, like my dog, I had to put him down recently. He was old, and I had to take off. Well, I guess I didn't have to take off, but I did take off a couple weeks from doing anything just so I could like kind of deal with having hit him for his last week, and then the week after just kind of trying to get back to normal, trying to let myself, grieve a little bit. But after that, I made myself come back and do my work and clean and talk to people and things like that. And if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't come back and started talking to you, Stevie, and watching y'all's videos and reading and writing reviews and things like that, I would still be sitting here and just feeling like depressed and not wanting to do anything and whatnot. But by forcing myself after, that week or 2 weeks technically of break, okay, now I need to try to do something. It actually like jump started my brain, I guess, and be like, oh yeah, okay, life's still here. There's still things in life to enjoy and people that care about me and things like that.
Hell yeah. And I always will like contact you and make sure you're okay, because that gets my anxiety when you're like going through something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know sometimes I'll go a day or a couple of days without saying anything, but I do always get like your messages and your texts and whatnot, and just like
Yeah.
knowing you're there. I feel bad for not replying since I did see the message, but just seeing that you're there, it helps in itself, even though I didn't actually talk to you.
That's okay.
Um, okay, so like if you're an adult and you're having some emotional issues or whatnot, then you think you should talk to someone, or maybe someone suggested that you talk to someone. How'd you go about getting help? Is really honestly easy. If you have insurance, um, there are some places, some therapeutic offices that will take you pro bono, like they'll see you until you can get sorted out on an insurance. But mostly if you're on an insurance, just Google, therapists in your area, psychologist or psychiatrist in your area, and then just, like you would any other doctor, call them up, ask them to set you an appointment, and you just go in. It's honestly very simple. But
Yeah.
um, a lot of people, like, I think I've done a video on this. I'm not sure. Maybe I wrote it down to do one and I never did it. I can't remember. But as I've heard a lot of people be worried about going to see someone because they believe that they might get committed to a psychiatric ward or an asylum or whatever if they go and they actually tell someone what's going on. And to be honest, 9 out of 10 times that does not happen. There are only a couple of things in which a psychiatrist or whatever is obligated to commit you, and that is if you admit to being a harm to yourself or to others, or if you admit to being suicidal. Not as in, I've thought about suicide, or, I think I would be better off not here. But if you came in and you said, you were planning on killing yourself, or if, things didn't get better, you were going to kill yourself, or things like that. That's suicidal to them, not just not wanting to be here. You have to actually have it in your head that you are going to, kill yourself. Um,
Yeah, they
those are-
usually just ask if I have a plan to kill myself.
right.
I
Because
usually
just
just say no, but it's always that back of my mind. I do want to do that, but I
right,
don't act on it, so you shouldn't act on it.
exactly.
No
And
one.
the therapist and the psychiatrist and whatnot, they see a difference between you thinking about suicide and you actually planning to commit suicide. So only if you go in and admit to being a harm to yourself or others, or if you say you're going to kill yourself, those are the only times that they will commit you, against your will, I should say. Um,
Yeah.
so going in to talk to someone, unless you're like going in there to admit to murder or admit to planning to kill yourself or something, they're not going to commit you. Um, Now, it is possible they will suggest a stay if you seem very depressed, or um, maybe like they feel like you're having a psychotic episode where you're kind of not really touching base with reality. They might suggest you go into a ward for a little while, but they can't legally force you to do so. So, besides that, um, therapists hear a lot of really bad, a lot of really weird stuff. Let me tell you that up front. So, don't go in thinking that you're going to scare them off. Because I mean, unless you're standing there threatening them or trying to hurt them or something, which they can call the police on you if you're attacking them, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if unless you're doing that, you're not going to scare them off, because those people have seen some shit. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah.
Um, I don't know. What else did you want to talk about, Stevie?
Uh, well, there was a time I was going through like having an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Like before I started to, like way before, I was going through a time like I like eating food, but I had a history of like overeating and then not really feeling good after and feeling really bad that I did it. It's like in my mind I'm like I'm hungry, but
Yeah.
if I should eat a little bit or I should just eat a whole lot of it and then not feel good. So I usually if I when I did that I felt sick the rest of the day until I fell asleep. Then the next day I felt a little bit better, and it was hard because I know like when I'm hungry I should eat a meal like, but it was really hard going through that because Patty, my mom, she was like, "Oh well, we're gonna go to yeah, oh it's Mother's Day. We're gonna go to this buffet place," and that was so hard because all that
Yeah.
food is right in front of me, and she didn't care. For starters, she didn't care that I was dealing with that. She's like, "Oh, it's just food. Eat it." Like, you don't know what I'm dealing with.
Right.
Yeah,
People who haven't dealt with eating disorders of whatever type, they can't honestly understand how difficult food and eating and exercise and all that is for people who do.
yeah. It was stuck in my mind. Like, oh, I just get my plate and then just eat that, or just continuously going getting more food, and then I'm like, I don't know if it's like that stuck feeling
Mm-hmm.
that like it's kind of hard to talk about, but it's like I want to eat food, but I don't want to overeat. But my mind wants me to keep on going over there and
Right. And
feeling
then you have,
bad if I eat
yeah,
a lot, or feel bad if I eat just a little bit, but I still want more. Patty don't get that.
right. And then
And
you have her sitting over there like, well, why didn't you eat? Or why don't you eat something else? And picking at you for eating or not eating. My mom did that too. That doesn't help.
yeah, I was I was really depressed at that time because I felt so depressed, and I just feel like oh, maybe I should starve myself. And I was
Yeah.
kind of doing that, just eating one meal, but still hungry. But then I got like some little fiber meals or protein stuff to hold me over, and then I
Yeah.
was feeling better. But once I started to, I I was able to do better with my eating, and plus like I lost. It was easier to lose weight, but I still have to like have something in my system throughout the day, or I'm just gonna be hungry. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, it does. I My mom was very strict about our diets growing up. Like when we were little, it was just, it was good stuff. It was like teaching us, you know, how to put a healthy meal together and that we shouldn't eat sweets except for maybe once a day and things like that. But then when I turned like, see, I was in the 5th grade when my mom started putting me on weight loss diets. Like I wasn't even overweight or anything. But she was so obsessed with her, her weight that she kind of put it on me because she always told me, well, if you don't start dieting now, you're going to end up getting fat and you don't want to get fat. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
okay. And I was like in 4th grade, and she had me on like these soup diets and like the Atkins diet and all this stuff. And so it got to a point where she was like measuring me every day, even up into my teen years, just like weighing me and like uh looking at my clothes to see if they were, getting tight. And if it seemed like they were my pants would get tight or something, she would be like, "Well, you have to lose weight because I'm not buying you any bigger clothes." Even though, I was still a kid and I was still growing into, bigger clothes.
Mm.
It was just like crazy stuff. But she was like that. She monitored everything I ate. If I ate something, um, she would complain about what I ate. If I didn't eat something, she would say I needed to eat. And I'm like, I cannot eat and lose weight at the same time. So it kind of really fucked up to where I got to the point where I would hide my food. Like I would get meals like she'd want me to get, and then I'd either like give them to someone else if I was at school, or I'd throw them outside, or flush them down and stuff like that, like hiding it that I wasn't actually eating it because she wanted me to eat these normal, big size meals every day, but at the same time expect me to be losing weight. And so I kind of got into the habit of, like you said, just not really eating, and that definitely wasn't healthy. So I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, it was something going through. It was something I was
Oh,
going through,
yeah.
and then plus I was overweight all my life and really depressed. And Patty didn't do anything about it. She didn't want to help me. She's like, okay, here you go. Here's a snack. So I'm
Yeah.
just basically snacking all the time since grade school,
Yeah.
and then I'm now trying to like take control of my life and be happier with myself.
Right.
I don't like my body at all. I just want to be happier in my body and be comfortable. I'm now like being more confident, feeling more confident and happier.
That's good, Stevie. I'm glad. Another thing that my wife has actually had trouble with her eating and everything too, because when she was growing up, she was really poor. She was in one of those situations where she wasn't sure if she'd even get to eat that day. Um, and so she grew up like anytime food was available, you better eat everything you could, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of transferred over into her adult life. where she's fine. Like we can afford, food where we can eat normally every day and stuff like that. So she doesn't have to worry about starving. But since she grew up, where food was available, you eat as much as you can. You eat whatever was available. She's started to have trouble with, eating normally because since we do always have food available, she's always wanting to eat. And for the record, she's fine with me sharing this. I know some people will
Okay.
probably be like, "Why are you sharing your wife's stuff on here?" She's fine. We've been married for 11 years. It's fine. I'm not. I just wanted to make sure no one thought I was disrespecting or anything. Oh, but on the topic of like eating disorders and eating problems and stuff, that reminds me of we've talked about depression and anxiety, and I mentioned my schizoaffective disorder, and I just wanted to state that for anyone who wasn't sure, who didn't know, there's more to mental illness and mental health than just mood disorders and personality disorders and psychotic disorders like schizophrenia. There's a lot more to it because, like Stevie brought up, there's eating disorders, there's sleep disorders, there's like even with depression alone, there's like 3 or 4 different types of depression. There's clinical depression. There's suicidal depression. There is major depressive disorder. And so there's a lot of
Wow.
different disorders that you might not have even heard of. And there's the ones that you even have, like bipolar or like depression. Those are pretty commonly known. There are so many different types of bipolar and depression that even if you think you know what you have and try to kind of take care of yourself on your own, treat yourself on your own, a therapist or a psychologist or whatever will be able to pick out the exact type of whatever it is you think you have. And by knowing that, the treatment becomes more specific to you. And so that's another reason I really recommend, if you can, um, if you think you're having any sort of problem, to speak to a therapist. Like, even if you're not sure, if you're like, no, I'm probably fine. I'm probably, just overthinking it. It's not going to hurt you to talk to a psychologist or a therapist just to see what their thoughts are. You're not losing anything. Um,
No, it's at the end of the day, it's just someone to talk to,
right.
and
And like,
yeah,
if you
whatever.
don't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because they always have this thing. If you talk to your caseworker or therapist, they're not allowed to share anything that goes whatever you talk about.
Right. It's called patient confidentiality. Like, no one will even know. Like, if you're worried about people thinking something's wrong with you or your family thinking something's wrong with you or anything like that, if you're an adult and you go in to a therapist or whatever and you talk to them, no one knows. No one will know except for your therapist, who legally cannot say anything. And from what I found, personality wise, most of them don't care to say anything because you're just one of, several patients. It's their job to keep y'all safe and secret. Um, but no one will know that you are seeing a psychiatrist or whatever unless you tell them. So don't worry about other people knowing, because unless you tell them, they're not going to.
No.
But yeah, and like I said, there's more than just, the main things like depression, being suicidal, being bipolar, being schizophrenic. There's more than just the general disorders um, that people talk about that you might have. You might not actually have a disorder, like I mentioned earlier. You might just be going through something rough, or have some sort of chemical imbalance or something like that, where you don't actually have an illness, but you do have some mental health issues that need to be addressed or would be helped to be addressed. So if you suspect something might be going on, or just if you're having a little trouble, staying stable emotionally, it's not going to hurt you to go and check out and see what a therapist or a psychiatrist might suggest. And back to the thing about they won't commit you except for those very specific times. You also, even if they do commit you, you have the right, and this is, I'm all talking about in the United States. I can't talk about in any other countries because I don't know. But you have the right to refuse medication. They cannot forcibly make you take medication. But from a personal basis, I suggest that if you are having issues and if therapy alone isn't helping, I do suggest at least considering taking medications because they can really help in a lot of cases.
That's true. Whatever you're going through, just never give up. Try to seek help if you can, or do what Baphy says. Just if you need medication, just go ahead, take it. Don't be scared of going to therapy, talking to someone. There's always someone that cares, that loves you,
Hmm.
always going to be there. And I know it's hard to trust people, but sometimes you gotta trust someone. You don't want to hold everything in there.
Exactly.
Yeah, never give up. Just try to seek help if you need it, and you'll be a lot happier.
Exactly. And that would be my advice, is to remember that you do deserve to be happy. Like, no matter who you are, what you're going through, you deserve to be happy. You deserve a chance to be happy. And so, if it even enters your mind, like for a second, that maybe you need some help dealing with whatever it is, mentally or emotionally, just ask for help. There's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in having a mental illness. Um, and like I said, unlike what a lot of people will say, is that, well, taking medication makes you weak, or it's all in your head, or all that. It doesn't. It takes a lot of strength to admit, to see that you have a problem, and to accept help for it. And like Stevie said, even if you don't go to see, a mental health professional, don't bottle everything inside. Do,
No.
write, make music, talk to a friend, anything will help more than, not doing anything at all.
Yeah, I think that's all I have to say on that.
All I
What about
can think
you?
of right now. That's all I can think of at the moment. Maybe if anyone wanted to hear what we had to say on other things, just like comment or something, I guess.
Yeah, leave a comment and please check out Baphy's channel out in his books and everything.
It was fun being on here with you. I think I got over the awkwardness, and then I just started rambling. It's just like these people are gonna be like, "Does he even know what he's talking about? He's just talking about everything. Calm down."
I guess it's Baphy's podcast now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I get like that. I'm one of those people you have to, like, if you're in like person with me, you have to like kind of like hit my knees, like, "Hey, shut up. It's my turn now." But it
It,
was fun doing this, Stevie.
yeah, it was fun.
I gotta pee. I sat here and like drank a whole bottle of water while we were talking, so now my bladder's like, "Fuck you." Oh.
All right.
Well, I guess I'll talk to you on text then, because I am going to the bathroom.
All right.
Did you need anything else for the podcast?
You can just send me your picture.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot to do that. All right. Well, let me go and take care of myself, and then I'll send you a picture.
All right.
All right.
Peace, guys.
Bye, bye, bro.